John 8:32 says, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Welcome to this Wisdom for Living discussion led by pastor, teacher, and counselor Al Rosenblum. For access to Al's other studies, to request an appointment for a personal discussion, or to contact our team, go to www.alrosenblum.com.
Let's get this thing rolling here. If you're indwelt by the Holy Spirit, then you need to have His ministry operational in your life. So if you're harboring sin in your heart, or you're rebelling against God, or you're in some form of rebellion, you might want to mention that to Him. You might want to deal with that. There's a reason behind all that, which is a real answer to being free of those type things, those addictions. Hopefully we'll get some answers for you along the way. But you be sure and mention that to Him. And you acknowledge that you've not arrived yet. Okay? All right, Lord. There's so many things going on in people's lives, including my own. Just challenges to trust You, to continue moving forward. I often want to be discouraged by the challenges of my life and people's lives and the hurt and pain I see. But I know it's all good, and I know it's all for good. So bless us tonight with an understanding of how our souls work and what happens when we turn away from You. It's really, really what it's all about. I ask all this in Christ's name. Amen. All right. All of these lessons are intended to connect the problems that Israel faced. They were saturated with the corruption that comes from idolatry. And so I'm going to try to make it even more clear, if I haven't so far, that idolatry, turning away from Yahweh, the Lord, the Jehovah, the Lord, when you turn away from Him and you look to anything else in your life to become dependent on it, it creates a corruption in your life. He is life. He is the only source of life. He is rightness. He is goodness. He is love. He is everything that we need and everything that we hunger for. It's Him. It's the way He made us. He made us to hunger for Him. And so when we turn to other things, and we all do because we're born separated from Him, so we start off our life separated and pursuing other things. When we turn to other things, it causes a corruption in our life. So we see Israel in Elijah's time under Ahab, 60 years after Solomon lets idolatry into the land. This is the third going into the fourth generation. And the corruption is just terrible. The people have accepted this Baal worship. They have just gone off the deep end. Elijah's going to come in and expose these guys for what they are, and fake gods. They can't stand up to the Lord. There is no Elohim like the Lord, like Yahweh. That's what He says. That's what that passage says. So what we're looking for is patterns. And so from there we can see the behavior patterns and corruption from idolatry that has all but destroyed our nation. More than the national corruption, I want us all to look at ourselves. This is about you and I looking at me, looking at yourself, and seeing these things having passed down, having been picked up by me, by you, and perfected, used in our life as a way of living, and it's passed down to our own children, and so we have to push back. You can't push back if you don't know what it is to push back against. The more that you transform your soul, your beliefs, your ideas, your expectations, what you're committed to, what you're focused on, the more you change that to be in alignment with where it's supposed to be, then the more we turn this around personally, in your family, and then collectively as a nation. We don't turn this around politically, although I'm all for being political. But we turn it around spiritually, individually, by choosing the Lord. That's how we do it, by choosing to be transformed. The primary focus of your spiritual life is to be transformed. All ministry comes out of that growth. You can't simulate the behaviors, the patterns, the ministry just because you decide that you're going to try to obey the commands. What's being described in the Bible as these commands, as these good works, are the result, the natural result, the fruit. Listen, you can't take a regular tree and go and stick apples on it and call it an apple tree, no more than you can just have Christians performing some Christian duty and call that ministry. It's just not real. And we've lost our way. We're into rituals and rules. The Christian church has rituals and rules. What words you can say? Can you say darn or can you say damn? Like that's some big deal. Now, I know what the world thinks, and certainly we need to protect the world. But splitting hairs over what word to use, focusing on sin rather than the cause of sin, as if the manifestation is if I have a fever and the problem is the fever, not the disease causing the fever. So, we've been through all this. So, I want us to be able to see ourselves, see how our parents and now us have been hurt and damaged by generations of corruption in our families. This is in our families. It's in mine and it's in yours. If you enter into the logic of these lessons, hopefully you're going to be able to put this together if I'm doing a decent job of trying to explain what happened. It took me a while to see what was going on in these passages, 1 Kings 17 with Elijah and Solomon and all this. Solomon started this. He allowed idolatry in the land. That was the one thing that God said, don't do. We're going to see Exodus 20, the first commandment. Listen to the first commandment. Then the Lord spoke these words. I am the Lord your God. I am Jehovah your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me, no other Elohim before me. There are other Elohim, okay? There are others that are called gods, false gods. Some believe that at the Tower of Babel, God placed 70 different, quote, angels, these spirit beings, over the nations, and he said, Israel is mine. And that these 70 spirit beings were supposed to be representatives of Yahweh, to lead these people and guide these people as a smaller God, if you will. And there's evidence that this is the case. I've started to believe it myself. And that what happened is that many of them got greedy and wanted to keep the worship, the adoration to themselves instead of giving it to the Lord. And this is what the war is about. So, this is why, listen, you go through the Old Testament now looking for idolatry. You listen, I never did it before. I never saw it. I was always looking for sin, looking for different, Samson's sins, as if sins were the issue. They are not the issue. The issue is who you worship. Now, nobody's advocating sin. If you're listening or this is recorded and all that, nobody's encouraging you to go out and sin. What we're encouraging you to do is find the reasons why you sin. There's a logic behind them. There's a reason, the purpose. It's not just some mysterious force within you that's evoking sin out of you. There's a logic to it. So, he says, You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol, any likeness of what's in heaven above, on the earth, or in the water under the earth. You shall not worship them nor serve them. Here's the point. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, of those who are turned against me, of those who have rejected me. Listen, this 4-generation curse, the passing down, genetically passing down of your sin patterns to your children, where it gets worse every generation, it gets worse and worse. This is for those who reject the Lord. When you turn back to the Lord, listen, but showing loving kindness to thousands and to those who love me and keep my commandments, He forgives. You turn back to Him, He forgives. But you turn away from Him and you look to other things and you refuse to turn back, He lets you go. He turns you over, Romans chapter 1, and lets this degeneracy take over your life, and then your children's life, and then your grandchildren's life, and it destroys everybody. We're right in the middle of it right now. It's what you see all around you in the news, the craziest things going on, and nobody seems interested in stopping it. They're creating it. Now, the first commandment is related to idolatry and results that naturally occur when it's practiced. It's been practiced in America for a while now. The false impostor gods, fallen angels, whatever they are, appear to despise the human race because they seduce us away from the only source of life and then pressure people into worship behaviors that destroy them. They don't seduce you away from Yahweh and then treat you better, treat you good. No, they destroy you. To enter into the top tiers of politics, business, or entertainment, you're required to compromise yourself. There are very few that can go up there and get into the top in business or politics or entertainment without having to make a deal with the powers that be. Now, that's a pretty well-known thing. Corruption and compromise explain the often seen unexplainable crazy behaviors that you see people in power make. They say they belong to this group and this party and this ideology, and yet the opportunity comes along to stand up and do the right thing, and they go, no, and you go, what in the world is going on? Well, who knows? I don't certainly know. I do know that once a nation becomes as corrupt as ours, that all kinds of things, blackmail, who knows, they're threatening family, I don't know. Maybe they're promising things, promising the moon. Thirdly, worshiping Baal required that you submit to practice addictive sexuality that eventually destroyed your marriage and family unit. Abusing the children and ultimately sacrificing them to win favor of the gods. So if you say, all right, I'm not going to worship Yahweh, I'm going to worship Baal. He's going to be my God. I'm going to pray to him. Well, he said, that's fine, come on in. We'll be glad to have you, but here's how we worship. You have to have extramarital sexual encounters with these different people, all different kinds. And so you go, okay, that sounds like fun. Well, it is fun, and you become addicted to that. And the next thing you know, your wife or your husband is like, this isn't working for me. And so it destroys the marriage, and then it destroys the children. So ultimately, with this type of worship, listen, they destroy you. They destroy your family. They destroy your children. And then they want you to sacrifice your children. Then they don't want you to allow your children to be born. They want you to sacrifice them in the womb. Hello. How about the all different kinds of sexuality? How about all different kinds of this gender stuff? Hello, where are we in America? What, third, fourth generation? How far? We gone too far? Can we come back from this? Who knows? So, Yahweh, the creator and the source of all life, does all the giving to us so that we can become like him. Listen, God gives. He gives and he offers grace. Forgives, offers forgiveness every single time. He wants you to grow. He wants you to stand up. He wants you to be like him, to become a giver, a lover, a hero, to rescue everybody. He wants you to become like him. Wonderful, great. Listen, rebellious spirit beings pretending to be gods requires that man do all the giving, all the sacrificing. See, what does that sound like? That sounds like religion to me. You know you're dealing with false religion when more and more is required of you and expected from you. More and more. They want from you. They want you to be more obedient. They want you to follow some system of rules that they've come up with. According to the Bible, of course, they want you to give your money, an expected amount. They will send you a done letter. They will send you a letter telling you how much you owe. You make a vow. That's not the Lord. That's religion. That's expecting more and more from you, rather giving more and more to you, so that in turn you can ultimately just give everything of your own that God puts in your life. You give it back to him. All of it's his, not 10%. So at some point, Solomon became bored with worshiping Yahweh, and he was experiencing more pleasure from keeping company with his idolatrous wives than with the Lord. He got bored or something. And when he got older, he said he loved all these women. He had all of these women around him. They talked him in to go into their secret worship services. Of course, Solomon is supposed to ferret that out and destroy it. But he allows it, and he goes to it, and he begins to get involved in it. Then he ends up building temples to it and allowing each one of these wives, I worship this God. Well, let's build a temple to him, and we'll allow worship. So now all the top tier people have to become part of this. See, when the king worships Baal, everybody has to worship Baal. If you want to be part of the in crowd, if you want to get the big contract, if you want to be get the promotion, if you want to be part of the government, you got to do what you got to do. You got to go along to get along. So that's what's happening right now in America. Is this corporatocracy, all these corporations have grown so big global that they've bought everything out. All the governments, all the media, they bought it all out. And now they can put pressure on every single company in America. Every public corporation in America now is under pressure to operate in a certain way. And this is a global thing. It's not just America. But it's focused on America because this is where people are free. Or they were. Now, all right. At some point, Solomon became bored. His wives pulled him away. Don't allow anyone to take you away from the Lord, to bring you to anything else. Don't allow it. Now, don't allow an obsession with a special teacher or some religious system that requires you to sacrifice your family. Here's what I'm saying, is that there's a lot of things out there that you can get involved in that are, quote, spiritual or religious, Christian, that will draw you away from what's important. There's a time for worshiping the Lord and listening to his word and growing and discussing that with other believers. There's a time for family. There's a time to invest in each other. That's how it works. And so when somebody tells you got to spend all your time with this particular teacher, that everything he says is right, that he's infallible, like the Apostle Paul, then what you're in that is moved from being a church into being a cult. When one man makes all the decisions and always right about everything and doesn't listen to anybody, that's not the church. See, that's where and brings followers and says, oh, you got to listen to only me. Listen, you need to run from that. It's just an opinion. Don't listen to me that way. I know some of you listen to my teachings and have benefited from it, but I'm certainly not arrived at all. I'm still learning a lot. I learned a lot from just studying this, trying to figure out Solomon. How did Israel go from being under Solomon, to whom God had appeared twice and to whom he was very faithful, and now 60 years later saturated with evil? How does that happen? Why does it happen? What can we do about it? Because that's where we are in our own life. And that's why we're looking at it. So, Solomon wanted to please these women that he enjoyed so much that he allowed them to talk him into going to some of their secret idolatry sessions. And rather than destroy them all, he decided to just enjoy them and to join the party. He gave into the debauchery of unrestrained sexuality, which was an issue for him. You know, you don't have 1,000 women in your life if you don't have a problem, an addictive problem with sexuality. So he gave in to this multiple partners, same-sex, who knows what he did. But once you get into this is where they take you. Multiple partners. You know, one partner's not enough. Oh, you don't have to be faithful. You know, it won't hurt your marriage. Now, how about they take you along and get you addicted to all that? The next thing you know, they're pushing this same-sex thing on you. And you know, you get so far gone, well, you're willing to try that. And then who knows where it goes from there. I tell you where it ends up. It ends up, you're a pedophile. Because you get so strung out on your sex addiction that nothing else, it's got to get more and more out there for you to enjoy it. And so this is how people become pedophiles. You don't start off as a pedophile. Contrary to the media's discussion that people aren't born pedophiles. They start off pursuing extra type sexuality, and before they go down a path and they end up in a place where they have to have something more and more novel, unique, in order to stimulate them. So that's how it works. So that's what they do. They get people addicted, and so you're willing to give up everything for it, and you destroy your family, just like drugs. So many kids that I know now that are part of this ministry over here where I live, that their parents just bailed on them out of drugs. They just gave them up. They just left them in the home with nobody to take care of them, nothing to provide for them. Just left them for drugs. So that's what's happened in America, this very same type of thing. Now, so he became so involved that he built temples. He opened up Israel to the worship of false gods. It always starts with the ruling class. All right? World leaders, wealthy business owners who are eventually forced to compromise and open themselves up to this demonic influence of these other creatures. These are very powerful, very smart creatures, very much smarter than mankind. And we follow this simple pattern. And for some reason, they hate us. They want to destroy us. It's all they try to do is destroy us. Global corporations have bought off and blackmailed the political leaders, the media, the sports and entertainment. I mean, people worship sports. Listen, I live in Alabama. You don't think people worship football here? Are you kidding me? You know how many people freaked out when Nick Saban retired from coaching? Jeepers. So when people leave their family home and enter into the adult world with empty and corrupted beliefs and views, they are open to anything that they believe will satisfy this hunger that drives their life, this hunger in the soul. So I want to talk about belief systems and building maps. I want to talk about childhood. I want to talk about mothers today. It's Mother's Day. All right. So We're talking about belief system and building maps for life. God made man a relational creature and an emotional creature. If you're in a relationship, let's say you're in a marriage or you're in just a friendship, and there's no kind of emotional connection, then really you don't have much there. Not really. So there are a lot of people that have lost the capacity for emotion. They have suppressed it so much that they've lost that switch to turn it on and turn it off. And they can only be emotional about certain things. And in their close relationships, emotion is not allowed. You're not allowed to get hurt. You're not allowed to be, that was hurtful. Well, no, it wasn't. No, you're not allowed to do that. I get to say and do whatever I want, and you're not allowed to call me on it. So there are a lot of people that are in that place. And what you do with that is a personal journey. Our entire life is charted by the relationships that come along. Your whole life, listen, you chart your life by your relationships. Your mother, your father, your siblings, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, who you married, how your children in your life. Everything is about relationships. Your relationship with God is the key to everything. It's the relationships. It's not situations. It's not money. It's not security. It's relationships. Everything that fulfills the soul comes through a relationship. Relationships are the most important. In fact, really and truly, they're the only thing in your life. Everything else is just part of the stage on which you play out your life. It's just part of the stage. Simple as that. Even your health and your finances and everything else. So when I see people, and I have a dear loved one that's just focused on money, making money, getting money, having money. Well, I got to have enough to be secure. Listen, your living has been guaranteed already. May not be what you want it to be, but God has already promised. You don't have to worry about that. He says don't worry about it. And yet many people make that their life focus, getting enough so that they're secure at the end of everything. And listen, you're secure anyway. But anyway, here we are. Our entire life is charted by the relationships we experience. We come into life with predispositions that become our tendencies and leanings towards certain types of behavior. I've been saying this for about 3 or 4 lessons. I hope you understand this, that you just naturally lean and have tendencies towards certain types of things. We call it lascivious and ascetic, and that's just basically 2 categories that kind of describe all the different patterns. But this stuff comes to you. It comes into your body in a package in your body, and your soul is attached to it, and you're born into this world with it. You see it practiced in your family because that's where you got it from. They practice these same basic tendencies and behaviors, and this is where you learn how to perfect it, and it becomes part of your life. That's just how this works. So, out of our parental relationships, we form our foundational impressions about life and then specific beliefs that become our map, directing us toward fulfillment in our soul. Listen, we're driven by this emptiness, this hunger and thirst. And if you don't have that, then you are very suppressed because it is a driving force. You are looking for something that will fulfill this, that will make this hunger, this thirst, this drive, this need, that will calm it down and satisfy it in some way. But problem is, it's not here. And you're going to be driven by it. And it's just the way God set you up. He set you up to be driven by that so you would finally try to find Him to fill that up. Everything else you've tried didn't work. Well, how about let's try God? And this is when you begin to have some success. So we're driven by this. And we develop these specific beliefs that tell us here's where the fulfillment is. It's in marriage. It's in family. It's in finances. It's in security. It's in popularity. It's in fame. It's in fortune. That becomes your map. And then you find specific areas of your life in order to obtain that. So, pretty simple stuff. You build beliefs all through your life. In your early life, you're asleep. You're in a trance. And so all the things that you bump into this person, and this person influences you this way. And then you stagger over here and bump into the next person, and they influence you in another way. And then you bump into this really important person in your life, and they give you this and that piece, and you're building this idea in your mind about where to go, where to head to find fulfillment. Most people head to marriage and then to family, some kind of success, some kind of financial security. That's where the world has taught us fulfillment is. But we're driven by it, and we're going to be driven by it all the way to the end. Now, the most important relationship in our life is our relationship with our mother. And we're dealt with, again, this is Mother's Day. The requirements of idolatry corrupt and destroy people. It destroys their capacity to be vulnerable. Listen, are you able to be vulnerable? Can you open yourself up to someone and actually care about them? Or are you shut down? Do you live behind walls? You destroy someone's capacity to be vulnerable, and therefore they can't be intimate. Because you try to be intimate with them, you're going to bounce off the wall. They're not letting you in. You knock on the door, you try to find the window, you want them to open up and be intimate with you. And maybe they will, maybe they won't. They don't know how. They didn't get that piece, that part of the programming in their child. They didn't get that. And now they don't know how to do it. And so they've lived their life without being intimate, without being open and vulnerable, and now they're just sort of stuck in it. And they don't know any better. And can God fix it? Of course He can. Can God bring you along to a point where you can be more healthy and more loving and more open? Of course He can. Does He want to? Of course He does. Are you willing? There's the question. So, all right. This corruption, this behavior of idolatry, it opens the door for all kinds of sexual deviancy, for all kinds of addictive sexual behavior. Sexuality is addicting. It's addicting. And it's very easy to get drawn into that, especially if it's all around you in your culture. This is what happened to Rome. This is what happened to every empire that was built. It corrupted from within. And that's what's happening to the one we're in. So, how do we fix this? How do we push back on this? So you destroy people's ability to open their hearts and be vulnerable. Therefore, they can't be intimate. You destroy, and listen, right along with that is the ability to have empathy. Empathy is when you say something in a certain tone, in a certain way, and you can see that hurt someone, that you stung them with the way you said that. Empathy sees that. Empathy can feel that. Empathy goes, oh boy, I hurt you. I'm so sorry. Man, you could feel that with them or for them. That's empathy. Man, that's so necessary in relationships. If you want to have a give and take in a relationship, you got to have empathy. You got to be able to see. Listen, mothers. I know we're all you mothers mostly are past all this, but maybe you have children. Listen, the ability to see how your children are reacting to what you're giving them is so critical. It's critical. So, now, children who grow up with parents who are caught in this idolatrous society, they experience abandonment. You say, well, I didn't abandon my kids. And listen, before we get into this, because I'm going to get tough, I'm going to lay out some stuff that's tough. And there's some women here, ladies here, that I love dearly, but they're mothers, and they're going to look at their life and go, whoa, It's got to happen. We got to lay this out. So here's why I'm laying it out. Not for you and your children, for you and your own mother. Your children have to choose for themselves. But you can choose to overcome the damage that was done by your own mother. So let's get this on the table. All right? So abandonment, you abandon the children. You can live in the home with them and still give them no attention, give them no praise, give them no love, no affection. They grow up feeling alone. You don't fill their soul in the way that humans are designed to feel. Only God can fill the soul, really, but humans have this part of it. There's a small part that we have with each other. It's not good for man to be alone. So he gave us each other, and that's the legitimate part that we give to our children. So, but listen, you got to be healthy to be able to do it. And when all this stuff passes down, your parents weren't healthy. They didn't treat you right. They didn't deal with you properly. And now you carrying all this baggage still into the next generation. And what do? And invariably, and you cannot help it, there is no blame in it, because all the blame was put on Adam, but you pass it right down to them. And they end up carrying it in a bigger way than you did. So, they get abandoned, they get abused, you get raised by someone who is angry, fearful, or sexually addicted. And boy, does that create a problem. You grow up in a home where somebody's sexually addicted and they begin to try to sexualize everybody, the little girls at young ages, and it does things to you. It makes you unable to trust, makes you vulnerable to others to do the same thing. It's not a good thing. You leave children empty, even with crushed spirits. This is where you get into the cluster B stuff, the mentally ill people, where the mother in a young age of this little child was expected perfection. That child is a reflection of her, and therefore that child at 3 and 4 years old was not allowed to be a little child, but was forced into some kind of mold. That little child will disappear and create the behaviors, a mask of behaviors that the demanding mother requires. That's how you create a narcissist. That's exactly how you do it right there. A narcissist is somebody whose life is nothing but an image. They're gone inside. They've disappeared. They're probably somewhere behind a door. But getting them to go find their real self, good luck. Because they are committed to this image. And to them, that's me. This image is me. Can't have intimacy that way. There's no real person in there to have intimacy with. They've disappeared. They call it the emptiness wound, where the person disappeared many years ago. So, all right, it leaves them empty with crushed spirits, unable to function in relationships in marriage and family. So, our parents were unhealthy. They had us and they treated us improperly, better than what's going on today, though. Man, my parents had all kind of problems and passed all that stuff down. But listen, they were there and they were steady and they were faithful. And what they didn't do, they didn't intend to not do. It wasn't like they just gave up and abandoned ship. That's what's happening today. I mean, kids just abandoned completely. So, this is what creates the inherited patterns that grow worse with every generation, this 4-generation curse. So it starts with idolatry, people, in this unrestrained sexuality, creating these addictive behaviors, and it moves on into other areas. And so now you've destroyed your family because of your sex addiction, and you can't hardly stand yourself, and nobody wants to be with you. And so you find a way to deal with the pain. You get on drugs. You get drunk. You stay drunk. You medicate the pain because your heart is broken inside. And all of this came from the corruption of letting go and rejecting Yahweh. That's where it started. That's where it started with Solomon. 60 years later, here we have Ahab, and the nation is in a state of corruption, saturated with evil. Now, let's talk about mothers. All blame and judgment was placed on the cross for the patterns of behaviors that were passed down to you, then demonstrated as an example, and that we adopted for ourselves and then passed on to our children. I'm just as guilty as anyone of all this. Now, life, if you grow up with a healthy mother who is a giver, who has empathy, see, she had a healthy mother, so that she can see when her child is emotionally hurting. A mother needs to be able to see when her child is emotionally hurting. They're afraid, they're angry. Mother goes in and soothes. Mother directs. Mother teaches. Mother helps. Mother's preoccupied with herself and she can only see herself. She never notices it. Little child, disturbed. You know what that child learns to do? Keep his mouth shut. Why? Because there's no help. Mom, I'm afraid. Listen, you'll be all right. No, here's the one that's even better. Mom, I'm afraid. Well, you know what the Bible says. Go believe that promise. It's like a rule. Go follow the rule. Go follow the ritual. It's just a ritual. Ritual and rules. When you get away from Yahweh, you go to rituals and rules. Now, what is your church? I don't know if you go to church or where you go to church. What is your church? Is it real? Is there some real stuff in there? Some real people with capacity to love and to give? Man, I hope so. I really, really despair over the state of the church. So you have a healthy mother. She's able to read her child and sense his discomfort and what he needs. She's able to comfort her child and teach them about facing the adversities of life, pointing them toward salvation and toward the Word of God. Wonderful mother. A woman whose family is not caught in the corruption of the 4-generation curse. I mean, good luck with that. I don't know many women. I have known some women that were that way. That just seemed to have a relatively simple life of trusting the Lord without all the complications of addictive behavior. They just had that. They married that. Their children were that. Their children married that. And now they're passing on genetics of spiritual life, of morality, of peacefulness, of confidence in the future. What a wonderful, wouldn't you want to be born into that family? Holy moly, of course you would. Now, this family is not caught in this corruption. Her children don't inherit emptiness and the tendency to pursue addictions while hiding their behavior. Positive and optimistic adults with capacity for empathy and emotional intimacy who attract and marry other healthy people as mates. Listen, God puts that together. God does that. When he has people like that, he protects them. He puts them together. He draws all that together. Now, we talked about cluster B before. These are people that are on the bad end of mental health. Personality disorders. This comes from personality disorders are partially inherited, genetically inherited, and partially they come from the time of 2 to 4 years old, primarily with the mother. Okay, so I'm going to describe some mothers that create unhealthy adults. You have a fearful mother, a smothering helicopter mom who can't allow her child any independence because he might get hurt. Watch out now, watch out. Don't get down from there. Don't get up there. Don't take a risk. Don't be an adventurer. Don't see life as a great adventure. No, be careful. Everything's a danger. And the worst thing that could happen is that you could get hurt. No, listen, the worst thing that could happen is you could amputate your spirit. Absolutely. You could tell a child, and cause a child to be so fearful that they never open their heart. Just live in this walled off situation. So, fearful mom who can't allow her son or daughter to be adventurous. They're unable to take a risk or ever open their heart for intimacy. This person lives guarded behind self-protective walls, hyper-vigilant and anxious. Are you anxious? Have you lived anxious? Listen, you may have had good reason to live anxious. Behind your walls, you're fearful because of the way of the people in your life. I don't know. But listen, fear is not from the Lord. And it's time to grow out of that fear. And whatever the reason for the fear that you're telling yourself, it's time to learn to not do that. Time to stop that, okay? So, all right. Here's an abused mother, hurting, angry. Listen, here's an angry mother. I've got a perfect example in mind, but I'm not going to share it. But I've seen this where a mother who's very angry at the way she's been treated, she's been abused and hurt by someone, and unfairly, just an evil's come into her life and hurt her and damaged her. Well, she's angry. And her little kid, her little 3-year-old, is not living up to her expectations. This 3-year-old represents her, and this 3-year-old needs to get it right. And so she crushes their little spirit. They're just bumbling around being a 3-year-old, and that's not good enough. She requires that this little 3-year-old straighten up and do the right thing, and it's time to be quiet. 3-year-olds don't be quiet. No, you got to be quiet. So they crush them. They crush this gentle, this tender, this vulnerable little soul, this little heart. They just demand from it. And this happens a lot. So this woman will be ashamed. She'll be filled with shame and guilt. And she will pass that on to her son. She will make him ashamed, or her daughter. She will make that child ashamed of being a child. And so what this child will do, in some cases, not all, this is predispositions. This child will simply take their real self and hide it away. And they will construct a mask of behaviors that create this appearance of obedience, of perfection, of I've got it together, and their life becomes a show. Their life becomes an act that they act out on the stage. So this lady requires her child be in perfection, constantly correcting and criticizing. I've been around people that were constantly correcting you. No matter what you did, you weren't allowed to make mistakes. They're correcting you all the time. And it came across as criticism. So, they trying to help. So this is what this mother tells him. I'm trying to help my little kid grow up and be, what he needs to be. Well, listen, what he needs to be right now at 3 and 4 years old is whatever he is, without any constraints. It's when you start to begin to discipline just a little bit, but you certainly don't put this demand of perfection on this child. And this happens a lot. There's no empathy, no awareness that you're hurting the child. And what this does, it produces a narcissist. This is what a narcissist is a person who was crushed earlier in their life in one aspect. So mother is demanding and requires, and you got to be this, and here's this little kid trying to salute and whatever. But then she drops him off at grandma's, and grandma gives him whatever he wants. There's no rules there. There's no lines in the sand there. Gets whatever he wants. So now he's entitled, or she's entitled. On the one hand, you gotta pretend to be one thing that mom approves of. You don't dare break ranks. You don't dare do what you feel like doing. You've got to stand at attention or whatever is required. But when you get with grandma, you can do whatever you want, and now you're entitled. So there's a sense of terrible shame and guilt and fear on the one hand, but you create this mask to cover all that up, and you feel entitled that other people are supposed to buy into that. And that's what a narcissist is. So it's a really difficult thing to be caught in. If you get on the internet and look at YouTubes about this particular malady, people will talk down about these people. But listen, these people are caught in a terrible, terrible thing. They're trapped in it, and they don't know how to get it. A lot of them don't even know they're doing it. They don't even know they're doing it. It's a difficult thing to live with. So this person presents the mask as the real self. All of this removes the capacity to be vulnerable, to have empathy, to do the necessary give and take in relationships. They're focused only on themselves and maintaining their perfect image. This is a person that in public you think is got it put together. Man, that girl is put together. Man, she's always on time. She's always got got it going on. She anticipates what the boss needs, and she's got it there. She's funny, she's fun to be around. Yeah, but when she gets home, she's nothing. She doesn't know how to do anything but produce this person who is impressive to everybody in the public. When this man gets home, he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to be tender. He doesn't know how to be intimate. He doesn't know how to sit down and just talk and let himself be open or let his wife be. He doesn't know how to do that. All he knows how to do is keep up this image. It's just an actor on a stage. It's a false self. And listen, everybody creates a false self. We present ourselves in the best light, and we present ourselves in different ways. And we kind of sell ourselves, and there's nothing exactly wrong with that. I don't like to live that way. You might like to live that way, but I like authenticity and the genuineness of just being me. And I don't know that a lot of people like me. This is not me. This is a gift that you see. This is not me. I'm a person just like you. Once I walk away from this ministry of the Holy Spirit, empowering me to deliver these ideas, I'm just a guy. All right, just another guy. I'm a smart guy. I'm a wise guy. I've learned a lot. And I'm a helpful guy, and I'm a loving guy. But I'm just a guy. This is what you see is not an image, but it's a gift. So anyway, here you've got an adult who is performance-oriented, hungry for approval, just needs admiration, hungry for admiration. They present themselves and their family as perfect to the world. They've got to hide all the problems. The daughter, she went through a lot, and now she's struggling with, some kind of mental illness. Well, you can't tell anybody. Don't let anybody know. Got to keep the perfect image. We've got it all together here. Here's an adult who was totally squashed their inner child. Everybody's got an inner child. Listen, inside you're still a little kid. And they were told that this child was not acceptable, was not required, and that the little child just scampered and hid away somewhere and created this image, this other person that was acceptable to the mother and to the father. So the child creates this perfect image as required by the parent, and they get stuck in this. This becomes who they are. They get stuck in it, and their life is simply, they live their life pretending, putting on a show, showing themselves to be all put together. And listen, they don't dare let any of that be seen or any of it come apart. If one little part of it were to come apart and somebody could see in there, the whole thing would fall down. And so they're very careful to stay distant. They keep everybody at arm's length so that nobody can tear down their walls. Just a pretty serious system of walls. All right. The focus of this person is all devoted to hiding the terrible shame that they picked up from the mother. All right. And then thirdly, finally, you have an abandoned and needy mother who's especially probably in an unsatisfying marriage because she's so needy on her husband that he's like, I didn't intend to marry a child. I thought I was marrying an adult woman who could be my partner. But this woman has been abandoned. This woman has an empty heart and needs somebody to fill it up. And the only person that can do that is God. See, your mother could have done it to a small degree when you were little. But that's come and gone, and now it's only God. Only God. So there's an unsatisfying marriage. And what this mother will do is turn to a child. One of her children will be empathetic and will notice her suffering and come and give sympathy, and she feeds on that, and she feeds on that child. So she feeds on the child's natural love and empathy, and what it does, it produces a needy, instead of giving to this child. See, she's supposed to be giving. She's a giver to her child, giving. You know, just like he came out of her, she came out of her. Her breast provides sustenance for her. The child feeds on the mother, not the mother on the child. And that messes everything up. Listen, all of this is a result of this corruption that gets into the human race and gets passed down. So listen, we'll get on the fathers next, if that makes you feel better. I'm on the mothers because this is really the core. Because this happens 2, 3, 4 years old. This thing's formed and put in place in a child's life at about 3 to 4 years old. Past that, and listen, dad as a rule doesn't have a lot to do with them at 3 and 4 years old. It's not that he doesn't have any influence, he certainly does, but it's the mother primarily at this age that's having this impact. So it can be very positive. And in a culture that we live in, it will invariably not be positive, but be very, very negative. And it's a result of corruption. Man, I know some stories, just young people that went off and now they're pregnant and there's a little baby coming, and listen, they can't find their way home. Let alone, now they're going to love this baby. Oh boy, they're going to love this baby. But all their personal issues are going to come out and be part of that baby's life. So who knows what's going to happen with this baby? Who knows? I mean, God, he certainly knows. And this baby's going to have all the grace of God available to overcome whatever problems come out of their life. All of it's good. God's going to use it all for good. I mean, it's not good in itself, but he's going to turn it around and use it for good and be like a miracle. He's a miracle man. He's the miracle worker. He's worked a miracle in my life, that's for sure. Of all the baggage and the nonsense that I inherited and saw in my family, just the religiosity and, gosh, rules and rituals, as if somehow that could please God. That's what I grew up with on the one side, and then the bootleggers on the other side. So, of course, I enjoyed the bootlegger side more than the religious side. But anyway, that's me. That's what I came through. And all of that created quite a bit of baggage in my soul that I've spent all of these years pulling out and throwing away, pulling out and throwing away. It really gives you peace. I encourage you to do it. So, I got just a couple more minutes. We all experienced a childhood with a mother who we loved, but who was probably not healthy. Odds are your mother wasn't healthy. Odds are, as a mother, you may not have been healthy. You weren't in a healthy place. Your kids came when they came, and you couldn't be more healthy than you were. Listen, there's no blame. Do not blame yourself. Do not put yourself down. All of this was in the plan of God. And he knew where you were, and he allowed that baby to be formed in the womb and out into your life, be raised up in your life, knowing what it was. So, maybe you weren't the healthiest when your children came along. I know I have not been the healthiest for my children. And there's a lot to work out, and there's a long journey ahead, I hope, with them to be able to help them with their children and to get everything righter and better along the way. That's the Christian life, transformation. So, maybe you've come out of your life, and maybe you're a person that doesn't have good skills. Maybe you have an incomplete map to know how to find fulfillment. Maybe your map does not include empathy. Maybe you don't have any kind of awareness of other people. You can develop these things. Empathy is not a natural thing. It's developed. It's developed in people. And even though you don't have it, you say, well, I'm 70 years old. So neuroplasticity says you start making different decisions that your brain will begin to change today. So, all right. Relationships work best when both parties practice awareness of each other's needs. I want to get this in before we leave because I heard this today and I thought it was really neat. This is called a Hawaiian healing. They call it a Hawaiian healing prayer. I just called it Hawaiian healing for relationships. First of all, when you've hurt someone, someone's hurt, someone's upset with you. Here's how you deal with it. This is wonderful. You say, I'm sorry for what I did. More than that, I regret that it hurt you. I really hate that what I did hurt you. And I am sorry. I apologize for that. Secondly, I ask you to forgive me and let us start over in this relationship. Don't hold that against me. Don't look at me now like I might do that at any moment, because I'm working for whatever that was caused me to say and do that. I'm working on removing that. I really hope that you forgive me. I'm sorry I did what I did. I'm sorry that it hurt you. I know I want you to forgive me. Thirdly, I am grateful for you and that you are in my life, and I'm even grateful for the conflict that's helped us to grow. And finally, I love you and I want only the best for you, and I'm hopeful that we can grow in intimacy in our relationship. Sorry for what I did. I want you to forgive me. I'm grateful for you and I love you. That's how you'd make an apology, folks. That's a wonderful scenario. And if you would begin to do that with your partner, if you have a partner, if you would begin to say, I'm sorry for when I hurt you. I really want you to forgive me. I'm thankful that you're here in my life and I love you and I want things to be better between us. That's how you do that. Father, I'm so grateful. I can't get it out. I'm grateful, Father, that the Holy Spirit reveals things, shows us things, enlightens our mind, and allows us to change. I pray for those that are going to stay that they can be open and truthful and honest and have an empathy for one another. And I ask you, Father, to give us a close-knit community here, that we would participate with one another in each other's lives. This would go beyond just me talking, that we would be able to put together something more than that. So I ask all this in Christ's name. Amen.